Hi, my name is Adam Berlin. Originally from Queens, New York, and now I live in Fairfield, Connecticut. My work includes in the AV world is mainly all video, such as video tech, utility, Steadicam, camera op, uh, and projection. Um, I'm well versatile in the video world, as I said. The reason I started this industry is because of music. I'm very, music oriented. I love music a lot, and I got a lot of different visuals. Um, why I enjoy this show is more about the education and spreading the word of how to do things, and spreading my knowledge to others is always enlightening for me, and I'd like to pay back in return. And I hope you guys enjoy the show.
Hi, my name is Iris. Currently, I am part of the in-house staff at the Omni Champions Gate outside Orlando, Florida. I've done a bit of everything from theater to radio, television, live events. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in theater, and my first job was in radio. So you never know where you're going to end up in this. I'm part of this community because I believe in education, and during this time, I believe everyone can improve their knowledge to get more gigs and do more things and just be more flexible in the new whatever it is we're going into. But I appreciate you're here. I hope you learned something and have fun watch the show.
Hi, my name's Dave Node, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I fell in love with technical theater in high school, and that led into mixing live sound at theme parks and doing lights and media at the time, which was 35 millimeter slides. I also got to work on concerts for bands like Chicago and the B-52s. I started my first sound and lighting company back in 1986. Over the past decade and a half, I've had the privilege to work for mostly Fortune 100 end clients. I got to travel all over North America and Canada and Mexico and the Caribbean and even Hawaii. I find myself doing main screen switch, camera switch, running media servers, doing projection, all sorts of V1 positions. With a bachelor's degree in technical theater design, APS and ACE certification, Christie projection switching certifications, and recently Barco Level 2 certifications, I get to design and execute some really challenging and fun projects now. During the pandemic, I dove into the social media side of our industry. I've written articles on virtual solutions and facilitated owner sessions for Avixa. During one of my weekly Zoom panels and cocktail parties, I was reintroduced to Omar, who turned me on to AV Educate. It's been a pleasure to participate in the AV Educate Facebook page and to share my experience on the AV Tech Talks panel. I love supporting my industry colleagues with education and mentorship during these challenging times. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm giving a little bit of DVE store. Oh, I hit the wrong one that didn't have the thing, and then I'm
Welcome back to another episode of AV Educate's AV Tech Talks. I want to thank you for being here so much with us on the AV Tech Talks panel and on Facebook and everywhere else that you're watching us. So let's go into some of these house rules. We go live to Facebook every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get notifications by when we go live by following the AV Educate page on Facebook, and while you're at it, join the AV Educate group. We'll drop the link in the comments. If you want to join the Zoom room by texting 407-504-7690. Again, that number is 407-504-7690. This number is only used for our panelists, and you won't receive any spam texts from this number, but you will receive weekly invites to the Zoom room. We're opening the rooms at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and we close the doors at 6:55. But keep in mind, panelists have to participate and have to keep their cameras on during the talk. Moving forward, due to the nature of streaming, there's a bit of a delay between when we say in our Zoom room and when it hits Facebook. So when making comments or asking questions, please provide some context. The user interface becomes more sleek, and this will lead to more meaningful engagement. Now, be the sharpshooter in the room. No questions are too basic. AV Educate's mission is to help through knowledge. People move from stagehand to technician. Chances are that others have the same questions you do, so please ask away. At the same time, we welcome comments and input on the topic at hand, so don't hold back that great topic or that correction when one of us says something inaccurate. Now, we don't know everything. We are human. We don't claim to know everything. We may discuss or show the way we do something, and that doesn't mean it's the only way, but it's the way we found that works for one of us. If you have another way that's easier or yields better results, please share that with everybody. The whole session is a live Q&A. Our questions will be discussed, the topics for about an hour, and then we'll move to more about a round table discussion. There's no formal Q&A section. Again, the whole session is a live Q&A, so don't wait until the end to ask your questions or to make your comments. And finally, a shameless plug. Please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram so we can grow bigger and collaborate with even more amazing people just like you. That's all I got, guys. Back to the main room, back to Zoom, and back to you all in Facebook land. Again, thank you for being here, thank you for watching, and thanks for sharing.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to AV Tech Talks. Thanks for joining us. We're excited. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Zoomosc. And I don't know if anyone has used it yet. Has anybody on the panel here had any experience yet with Zoomosc or heard about it? Obviously, other than Andy and Richard, who developed it.
Got it installed today, ready to roll here, Andy. Let's see what you got.
All right. Great. I know that that there's been some buzz on some other channels and other places, so I'm pretty excited. I'm assuming everyone here obviously is using Zoom because we're on Zoom. And maybe Dave, what's some of the things you wish that you could do with Zoom a little more easily when you're producing virtual events?
I would say multi-pinning, and cutting around the pins and things of that nature. Coming up with 2-box, 3-box, 4-boxes easily. Maybe playlisting them. I don't know. I'm excited to hear what this will do.
Sometimes those functions are you have to click a mouse or right-click something to find them, and it becomes tricky. I think we have some companion users in the panel tonight. I think by a show of hands, pretty much. Yeah, Ori and Brent and everybody. So Ori, you use Companion a lot. How much automation are you able to do with Zoom in Companion currently?
Currently, I'm still pretty limited. I can do anything that you can set your global hotkeys to in Zoom, and that's pretty much the limit.
Got it. So it would be very useful though if you since you're using Stream Deck and Companion, be able to press buttons and do some of those other things.
Oh yeah, I could think of almost infinite uses.
Excellent. So that's great. It seems like we all kind of feel like Zoom is a great tool, but it could just be that much better. And I think that's where Zoomosc comes in. So unless Bodhi or Omar, if either of you guys have anything to kick us off first, if not, I'll kick it over to Andy.
Just as usual, thank you guys for being here.
Cool. Omar, you want to? Yeah, you're busy. Omar is working today. But being so dedicated as he is, he decided to. You can see he's working in a truck, and he's doing some cool stuff. So thanks for coming in on the phone. He might not be able to join us, talk to us too much, but yeah, he's clearly working, and that's Mr. Jeff Keithley with him. So we appreciate those guys for always contributing to the show and doing his part. So thanks, Omar, for being here, even though you're kind of in the shadows. So with that, I wanna kick it off to you, Andy and Richard. Let's talk about Zoomosc. Let's get everybody hyped up and learning how to set this up.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed, and thanks to everybody for having us. As introduced, I'm Andy Carluccio from Liminal Entertainment Technologies, and along with my colleague from across the pond, Richard Williamson, we're the creators of Zoomosc. And as was alluded, Zoomosc is an expanded version of the Zoom client that's designed to give you exactly those things that we had just discussed, the additional layer of control that you wish you had in Zoom. We all know and love Zoom. It's a great teleconferencing solution. When we get into a production environment, there are a little bit more integrations that we want. And the goal behind Zoomosc was to really give you that option to control Zoom with anything you want. We know that you guys are, experienced AV pros. You have the hardware, software, workflows that you like. And by introducing OSC into Zoom, we can give you access to use those workflows with Zoom as the back-end CDN. But we can also use it just for, good meeting management. There's certainly a lot of use cases where we see people using it just to wrangle the Zoom call a little bit more naturally, be it with a physical controller, some software workflows. And of course, with design options, the incubator for Zoom OSC was virtual theater. People wanting to pull a little bit more to be able to express themselves creatively inside of Zoom, and that workflow became the establishing pipeline for a lot of things we're going to show today. So we're super excited to dive into it. Richard, I don't know if you want to give a little introduction of yourself and say hello to everybody tonight.
Hello, everyone. I'm Richard. It's very late here in London. But nice to see you all. I met Andy. I was doing a streaming piece of theatre over here in the UK, which luckily someone introduced Zoom OSC to me when it was Windows, and really made the show possible. And then Andy and I had some conversations, and I ended up developing the Mac version, and now we're working together to build out version 4, which enhances a lot of the sort of feedback and makes it more of an integrated product, I would say.
So we're going to go through, a quick start for Zoom OSC, just so you guys can get comfortable using it and see that those first integrations. I'll walk you through setting it up with the companion, which I know you guys have looked at before. I'll also show you quickly how to set it up with QLab, just in case you're looking for that serialized control versus the nonlinear control from your Stream Deck. And then we'll let the questions kind of guide us from there. We're happy to show you some of version 4. I know we've got some fun previews that we can show you of how that works. But if we're feeling good, I think I'll show a little bit of the workflow, and then I'll start getting people set up. Does that sound good to you, Ed?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Let's do it.
So because we're using Zoom OSC in this call, we are going to shy away from using the screen share. So apologies in advance if some of the cuts or something we have to figure out and the resolution and things like that. But I'm going to use my own source, and I'm just got vMix on the side here. And I'm going to switch between my displays. So I'm going to merge on over to Liminal's website, and this is where you can grab Zoom OSC. If you go to the Zoom OSC tab, you can fill out a download form. There's also a couple other resources I just want to make you aware of. So the user guides where you'll find most of how to get this thing set up and get it going. A contact form if you ever have any questions. We have a Power Users Slack group as well, where you can reach out and people post integrations and things that they've done. And then of course at the bottom here, another link to our FAQ and then the download as well. And as Richard stated, this is available cross-platform for macOS and Windows. The other thing that we're going to use tonight is the companion preset. So we've made a quick start for those of you who are using the companion. If you hop into the user guide and you go down to integrations and utilities, at the very bottom of the page is a download to grab our .companion config file. And so if you've used companion before, you'll know that inside of companion, under the import tab, you can go grab a .companion config file. And if you do that with Zoom OSC, that'll give you all the presets that we're going to go through tonight. So that's the only things you'll need to set up ahead of time. Everything else, QLab stuff, I'll show you how to do that from scratch. But that's the only sort of prerequisites that we're going to be working with tonight. Now, at this moment, I have actually joined this Zoom call with Zoom OSC, but just to sort of clarify what exactly is happening. This is one workflow that we use fairly often. It's not the only workflow. There's a bunch of different ways you could build it out. But essentially what Zoom OSC is, fundamentally, it's an OSC bidirectional interface to Zoom. So OSC is Open Sound Control. It's sort of the network-based successor to MIDI, if you're familiar with that protocol. And the idea is that you can, from your favorite controller or media server, you can tell Zoom to do something, and then Zoom can tell you back about what's happening in the meeting. So you use the bidirectional OSC bridge, and then you can do video ingest into your broadcaster or into your media server to have intelligent mixing or things like that, or cues, or really anything that you could think of. And then you can pass the return feedback into the Zoom call, kind of like we're doing right now with the encoder, or you can send it right off to a distribution platform. Really what we're doing here is we're just giving you the ability to tell Zoom what you want it to do, and likewise get information about the meeting that might be helpful to you when you're setting up the call. So at this moment, I'm going to merge over to Zoom OSC. When you run it, it looks very familiar because it is exactly Zoom. It runs as a Zoom client. And then on Windows, you have a console. Looks like this. It's got some ASCII art at the top right when you launch it. And on Mac, you have a separate view that gives you a little bit more control and the same sort of status information about the call. So what Zoomosc does is it joins just like any Zoom client. You can log in with a non-SSO account, or you can just go to the only join tab and type in the meeting ID and password, set a username, and hop right in. And then once you do that, you're already halfway there. It's already detecting things that are happening in the meeting. It's already making choices and starting to send OSC information back to you. But what I'm going to go back to my primary display now and jump back into the companion. I'm going to head over to the web emulator, which you may be familiar with. I also have sitting next to me an actual physical Stream Deck that I'll be referencing throughout our setup. So once you've sort of initialized with the companion config, you get this. And right off the bat, you'll notice a couple of things that might get you excited. I have a 12 button setup, so I have pin options for persons 1 through 12, spotlight options for the same group, video toggles to set video on and off, same with audio, and then some utility functions as well as pinning to the second display. If you have a second display active and you want to leave, the first screen alone and only pin on the second display, you can do that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the update button. And what that's going to do is it's going to teach Zoomosc everybody who's in the call. So if I pop back to that console window that was up, you'll see here a list of everybody, whether they are webinar or attendees, are showing up in this console. And then what I'm going to do is let me switch my screen back to the Zoom call. And then let me picture-in-picture my Stream Deck here. Let me see if I can actually do this. Yeah, there we go. So I hit the pin 1 button on my Stream Deck and we pinned Ed, and I can just progress right on through. I have Zoomosc pinned as well, so that's not super helpful, but I can pin Richard, let's say, and I can just keep going down the line with anybody who has video on, and I can hit a button physically to pin them. Now, there's no keyboard shortcut to do that. So this is the only real way to get that to happen. Now, let's say I unpin and now I'm talking to myself again. I'm recapturing. Don't want that. I hit the gallery view button and I can pop back to gallery view. So I have hardware control of things that aren't available through key bindings, and that right there is sort of the main magic of it all. Is that we're giving you dozens and dozens of things that Zoom cannot do with a key binding. We're giving you the ability to do that through your controller. So again, the things on this patch are pinning, spotlighting, turning video on and off, turning audio on and off, switching between gallery and speaker view, and then some memory functions that will help you. So that's currently like the bread and butter of Zoomosc 3.2.1. They're the most commonly used features for broadcasters. The other sort of big feature that we have is gallery tracking. So we will give you through an OSC packet the order of the gallery view so that you in your media server can automatically crop and follow or do whatever it is you want to do with that information. We've seen some escape rooms, people use that information. They'll put a glyph on screen. People have to arrange themselves in the gallery view properly to solve the puzzle, and then it will break the breakout rooms and go into the next section. So you can do a lot of really cool things for audience interactive work or things like that. And I know that Richard's piece, the one that we originally worked on with Zoomosc, a conversation, relied really heavily on that gallery tracking information.
Andy, can I ask you to stop for just a second? Could
Please.
you go back to where we can import the presets for Companion real quick so I can find those presets?
Absolutely. So I'll merge back over, and so here's my Companion dashboard.
Yep. Open there.
And then under the import export section, there is an import button.
Okay.
And once you do that, it'll ask you to find a .companion config file. Once you've located the file that you downloaded from our website, you'll hit
it's on your website. Okay.
Yes. So the place to download it is here on the setup guide page. So once you download it from there, you'll hit replace current configuration, and that will flash that'll flash your.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So Andy, do you have a list of everything you need to download to install it on a Mac?
Yeah. So to install it on a Mac, you're going to do the same download, but you're going to select Mac when you go to download it in the same Companion config.
So the config is the same.
The config file is the same because BitFocus is cross-platform. The only difference for the Mac user is going to be when you fill out your download form, you're going to say that you want the Mac download for Zoomosc. and that'll get you set up. Everything else is going to be exactly the same for both processes.
That config file overwrite any other things in Companion?
So when you set it up and you have the option to add it or to replace your current configuration. When I set it up, I replaced mine because I didn't have anything I wanted. But either way, I would suggest a backup. But you can just add it to your current
So we could
configuration.
do a mix of Zoomosc commands and other commands if we just add it.
Absolutely. And you still get access to all of the different functions from the different manufacturers. What we're doing is we're logging a couple of different, so we give you a template, that gives you everything I just showed you, but we also store those functions so that later on, if I pop back into the buttons and you wanted to make an edit here, let me click on the pin 12 button. What you'll see is over here on the right-hand side, let me zoom in a little bit to make that easier to see. This is the OSC path. This is the OSC value. That's all you have to do. We give you actions when you import the preset for the different arguments that you can send ZoomOSC. Now you might be saying, well, how do I know, what I need to send? All of that is controlled through our API. So if you go back to our setup guide, you hit the API button, it'll scroll you down the page. And we have an API for Windows and an API for Mac. So if you're on Windows, you can click this button. And this document will tell you every command that we give you access to, as well as every command you can expect the program to return back to you. Likewise, on the Mac, a similar listing is available. And one of the big things that we're doing in the version 4 update is we're consolidating this, and in addition to expanding it dramatically. So Mac and Windows will have the same experience and the same user interface. It's been a little bit of a challenge because Zoom's SDKs are written in different programming languages. So the C++ SDK for Windows and the Objective-C language for Mac OS, which means unlike most sort of development applications where your team will create one code base and compile to two platforms, we have to maintain two completely different code bases. So one of the things that's taken us a while to, but we're happy to be bringing in version 4 is that kind of unified experience now that we got our heads around things a little bit better. But that API document's available to guide you through setting up your own integrations or adding more buttons to the companion integration if you want to start with that. Of course, this document's very, very helpful if you're doing anything in a media server where we don't have a preset. So if you don't have a preset, this document will guide you through how to get everything that we did. That document that we shared for the companion is really just a quick start to help you get started. The companion already comes fully loaded with the ability to do OSC. So you just need this document in theory. Are there any other questions, Ed, that we should hit at this time, or should I dump into QLab to show the serialized control?
I think there's a couple quick ones we can probably get right through. From Lou Perez, does ZoomOSC require a minimal account level, meaning paid account, etc.?
So ZoomOSC does not impose any login requirement, save for you can't use an SSO, single sign-on account at this time. Zoom's SDK doesn't really have a good workflow for authorizing SSO accounts, but there's nothing that says you can't use a free version. In fact, that's what I'm joined with right now. My person is joined with our company account, but the ZoomOSCs on the call are all using free accounts, and so there's no requirement. Just so long as if you start a meeting with a free account, you'll have the same restrictions imposed that you would have with the vanilla client, but there's no limitation that we've imposed based on what tier of Zoom account you have.
Great. Jeff Francis asks, can ZoomOSC provide panelist names to Companion so that their names are on the Stream Deck buttons?
So I noticed that in our attendees, we have Ash, who is working on our next companion integration, and that exact feature that you've just mentioned is one of the headline features of version 4. So with version 4, we're going to be able to give you a lot of information about the Zoom call back to you in a way that you can really build some advanced integration. So the Stream Deck profile that's going to launch with the version 4 update is going to be able to hop into a meeting, instantly learn the names of everybody in the call, as well as their position in the gallery view, and populate buttons with their names on the keys that are associated with all the different actions, with nothing you have to do on your end besides joining the call. So that's one of the really, really powerful features of version 4 is that exact feedback right onto the key. And like I said, it's reactive too. So if the gallery order rearranges, your buttons will rearrange if you want it to, so that you can hit an index in the gallery view and apply it on whoever's there.
Wow, that is huge. That's awesome. That's going to change my workflow and make my life a lot easier moving forward.
Every
sorry.
virtual school teacher in America is going to want one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great use case. Is this Orion Slater asked or says, I couldn't get multi-pin to work when I used it a while ago. If I click to pin another person, it would replace rather than add. Is that still the case, or is there a way to do that now?
So right before the end of 2020, Zoom released an SDK update that allowed us to add multi-pin and multi-spot, which wasn't currently available. This is one of the challenges of having an app that's based on Zoom's SDK, is that they tend to delay some of the features, but they've been really good lately since some back-end changes, and they've really pushed out a lot of features that have been helpful to us. So in the pro version of Zoomosc 4.0, you're going to get the access to the multi-pin and the multi-spot in the app, and we'll handle the interface the same way before. You'll have an add pin function that'll be able to add somebody to the list of pins. So in the beginning of the show, we talked about wanting the ability to be able to queue up these these different looks in Zoom. And you'll be able to do that. Give me a 2-shot, give me a 3-shot. I want these people. I want to call it on this group. I want everybody except this person. We'll give you those macros in the memory management to be able to build those views through multi-pin and multi-spot, which will be really, really exciting to see what you guys do with that.
Great. Richard Zaltner and Michael Grabe in the Zoom webinar side have both asked, is companion required to use Zoomosc so that you cannot use a Stream Deck without companion?
So there's no requirement to use companion. There's actually no requirement to use anything specific. With Zoomosc, the goal of the program is to be able to have anything control Zoom. So that's why it's based on an open protocol like OSC. Now the companion is a great way to add networking commands to the Stream Deck very easily. However, again, it's not mutually exclusive. There are other people who have built integrations that don't require companion. We have a great power user, Felipe Nardi, who has built everything just working with the Stream Deck SDK, and has created a lot of stuff in the world of magic and interactive events that don't require the companion to be installed at all. So no, companion is not an explicit requirement. It's just something that we offer as a quick start, and we know that this group's familiar with it, so we're kind of leading with that. But anything that can send or receive OSC can work with Zoomosc, and by extension, can control or learn about your Zoom call.
Perfect.
Just throwing out there, you don't have to have a physical Stream Deck to use Companion. That he just showed you the virtual Stream Deck. If you download the software, you can launch it and have a little screen, with the Stream Deck buttons on it.
Yeah,
oh, that works off your phone. They have the phone app, and you just tap it.
Or-
you get the
or iPad.
haptic feedback too of it.
Yep, and then there's apps like Touch OSC, which allow you to make completely customized sliders, wheels, all sorts of stuff, whatever you want. And because again, it's OSC, it's a network protocol, so it doesn't have to be physically associated with the computer's hardware, just as long as it's on the same network as it, and you're able to address it through your switch or however your network's configured. You'll be able to talk to it.
Andy, do you know anyone that's programmed an APC 40 MK2 for Zoom using your software yet? That
Not off
have
the top of my
maybe
head.
created templates or anything? Because I'm kind of hoping through this process that a lot of people that have this equipment, obviously tens and 20s and mounds of us have, various equipment that is comparable, that we find a way to create a database of presets so that people can go to those and say, oh yeah, I've got this device. I've got somebody that's already done a setup, and grab those config files and be able to share that stuff. I think it'd be great.
So a great place where people have been sharing their presets has been in our Power User Slack group. That's where a lot of the theater-based presets have become available, and people have done exactly what you just described. They say, I have this integration, I made this thing with it, I'd like to share that. And that extends too beyond just building presets. There's people who have built logical operators and reactive things as well. We make a GLSL shader that allows you to automatically crop and identify the gallery view. People have done things in JavaScript that have built off of that backbone and allow you to do all sorts of really cool things. So all of those kind of projects are being posted in our Power User Slack.
Great. You know what, Andy? The Facebook questions are piling up, so I'm going to just ask about 2 or 3 more, and then we're going to let you continue. we will get to as many of the questions as we can. This is a very popular topic, and the questions are coming from all angles. So
Great.
we're going to just do 2 or 3 more, and then we'll let you continue with the demo. Lars Svensson asks, what's the difference between pin and spotlight? Which is less of a ZoomOSC question, but just to quickly answer that, pinning happens on your local machine. Spotlighting, if you're the host or a co-host, happens for everybody's view in Zoom. So that was an easy one. Do you have anything to add to that, Andy? I think that's pretty easy. Jason Vaganoskis, I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sure I just butchered that. Is there a way to get rid of the Powered by Zoom watermark on ZoomOSC 3.2? I'm assuming that it comes from the Zoom API.
Richard's over there laughing because we were just talking about this. What I would say is check out version 4 and check out version 4. That's all I'll say.
Great. I mean, one of the things you and I talked about the other day, Andy, was if you make your ZoomOSC instance a host or a co-host, it can do the spotlighting, but if you are capturing another instance of Zoom that's in the same meeting, with I'll stop being facetious for a second, and there are workflows that help you get around this. So like Ed was just saying, you could have ZoomOSC running kind of headlessly and be capturing your vanilla Zoom call, and use spotlight functions or things that are global to be able to get your switching through your hardware or your queues through your software, but keep that clean view that you would get from vanilla Zoom. There's other things you can do. You can mix and match. If you run Zoom in multi-monitor mode, we also support multi-monitor mode in ZoomOSC, and both views are not always watermarked. So what you might choose to do is have a gallery view on ZoomOSC so that you get the gallery tracking information, and so you get some of the toggle options, but then have that second view come from a spotlight on your other vanilla Zoom, so you get that, and then both views would be without a watermark as well. So there's workflows around it, but yeah, it's something that's imposed by the API. It appears that Zoom is making some changes on that. But that's all I'll say at this time on what they're doing. And just to be clear, when you say vanilla Zoom, for anybody who may not realize, you're just talking about the regular Zoom client that would be on your computer.
That's right. Yep.
Great. Just so everyone's clear. The last question before we continue on, and like I said, we will get to the questions. It's from Christine McKay. To turn off and on audio with ZoomOSC, does the attendee have to have given permission? Something that is an option in Zoom setting up a meeting or webinar.
That's right. So inside of exactly as you identified, if you give pre-approved consent to co-hosts, you'll be able to have that Zoom unmute command actually commit the unmute. Now, what we're doing, one of the things we're doing with ZoomOSC version 4 is we're giving you a lot of remote control options. And the remote control will bypass the consent system entirely. If both ends in ZoomOSC specify that they allow somebody else to remote control them, you'll be able to do everything from setting someone's camera device, setting their virtual background or video filter, setting their audio device, unmuting, turning video on and off, all of those things. If both ends are running ZoomOSC, they'll be able to remote control each other. But just with vanilla clients, yes, pre-approved consent, just negotiate that before your meeting, set that up, and then ZoomOSC will be able to commit the unmute without a consent request.
That's great news to hear. So that's awesome. So let's continue on. Let's learn some more about ZoomOSC, and then we'll get some more questions later on.
Great, yeah, and I'm really happy that the questions are coming in because we'll tailor this to what folks are finding interesting for sure. So I'm going to next show you how to set this up with QLab. So QLab is a media server by Figure 53. It's used a lot in the world of theater. And if with the Stream Deck, we showed you a lot of nonlinear control options that make sense in broadcast environments, live switching, that kind of stuff. But there's a whole other side to our user base that wants to have serialized queuing, right? They have rehearsals, they practice things in the theater. They want this spotlight to come right after this sound cue. And then they want to go to gallery view after 5 seconds when the music fades out. And they want that to happen every night, repeatably and automated. So what we're doing in QLab is along those same lines, just as an example. So let me switch over to my Mac, and then let me pull up QLab. So I'll show you how to get this set up. What I'm going to do here, let me delete my I'll leave this queue here for now, but let me go over my settings wheel and I'll show you how I set this up. So as I mentioned, we do have a Mac version of ZoomOSC. Now I'm not running that version right now. I am running version 4 alpha, but for the sake of this demo, I'm going to show you how to send OSC commands from QLab to another computer on the network just to demonstrate the remote power of the OSC protocol. So what I've done is I've gone to the settings cog wheel for my QLab patch and gone down to the network tab, not the OSC tab, the network tab. I've given a name to my adapter, and I've given it a destination address. This is the private IP address of my desktop, which is currently running the Windows version of ZoomOSC. If you were running the Mac version and on the same computer as the as QLab itself, you would just put the local host 127.0.0.1. And right now, ZoomOSC is running on port 8000. So once I've configured that, if I hit these concentric rings kind of in the center of the screen here, this is the network queue. And the network queue is basically an OSC queue. So there's all the things you can normally do with a queue, pre-waits, triggers, durations, things like that. Under the settings page, you select the destination. So I'm going to choose Atlas, which is my computer, and then ZoomOSC, which was the preset that we just created to specify the IP and the port. Type is going to be an OSC message. I don't need any fade. And here is where I would type that command that came from the API on our website. So in this case, maybe I want to do a pin command. So I will type /zoom/pin, and then I need to put an argument. Now there's a bunch of different ways you can identify people in ZoomOSC. I like to use numeric arguments because that's sort of what the world of theater is like, but you could just as easily type somebody's username here. You could use a macro to specify their gallery index, and then you could pin them by gallery index. But for right now, I'll just pin I'll pin person 0 on a 0 index list, and I'll fire that command. And in my ZoomOSC, you will see that I have indeed pinned Ed, who is sitting here, by firing that queue. So that's the sort of the power of QLab. Now you just can fire down that list at the top of the night, and that will do everything that you needed it to do before. And it'll be able to do that repeatably. So that's sort of the serialized side of queuing. And this is also, again, using a separate device from the computer that's running ZoomOSC to control the Zoom call, just to show you the power of networking for the controller. Where do you want to go next, Ed? Should we hit some more questions, or should we jump into some of the other workflows?
Yeah, I kind of lost you, Andy. Could you go back just one second? I'm sorry, Ed. I didn't mean to, but I'm kind of losing track of what's going on here because I'm in Companion. I've got ZoomOSC open, but I've got like 4 options to fire it, and I can log in like 3 different ways: email, SSO, REST API with login, or only join. So, could you tell me what the difference is there with just the login to ZoomOSC?
Absolutely. So there, as you said, there's a bunch of different ways you can log into ZoomOSC. The 2 that are going to be relevant is the only join, which allows you to join a Zoom call without an account, and the first option, which is login. And like I said, that account that you log in with can't be an SSO account. I know it does say SSO. If you have an SSO token from your administrator and you work through all those hoops, then yes, you can use SSO, but that's not really a supported use case. So if you have an account, though, that's like an AOL email or whatever it is, some throwaway account, then you can log into Zoom. And that's what we did here. This webinar requires pre-registration. So Ed was kind enough to pre-register the accounts that we wanted to use with ZoomOSC, and then we could join this meeting with that. So if you have a registration barrier, you need to log in with that account. You need to pre-register with the account that you're using. Once you've done that, then you can join the meeting.
That opens an interesting question for me then. I have a regular pro account, plus I have a business account, which is a 1080p account. So does ZoomOSC take on the attributes of that account that you're signing into then, or is it granting you other stuff that you wouldn't normally get? So if I have a 1080p account, I'll be able to do 1080 through ZoomOSC, correct? And
yeah, we've been able to receive 1080 on the ZoomOSC when we're logged in with an account that has that feature. In terms of all the other benefits, we have a business account as well. I haven't seen a discrepancy, but our business account is also behind SSO. So I joined the Zoom call that I then create. So I create it with my vanilla Zoom client, and then I'll have ZoomOSC join it, and then I'll give it co-hosting permissions if I needed to be able to spotlight. That's the most common workflow for me. Is I'll join with my normal accounts, or I'll start a meeting with my normal account, or whatever it is, register the webinar, do all that stuff the way I normally would, and then just throw ZoomOSC into that call as a controller.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great. Is there anything else from the panel, real quick, while we're at a pause moment? Because otherwise, I could fire away a few questions from Facebook.
I was just going to do a quick one.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, John.
So, Andy, when you have two instances going, so you have two OSCs in the same Zoom meeting, can those controllers be combined? Can they be at one location, or do you have to feed each the controllers from each individual instance, or can they talk?
That's a great question. So the first show that used ZoomOSC had 4 copies running on 4 different networks all over the country. We had somebody whose job it was to do live camera switching. I think this was a theater production. There were 4 types of cues that would be fired. There were non-linear camera cues where basically the operator was trained on what types of shots the director wanted to see from the actor's performance, and they were following that along and firing that with a non-linear control surface. Then there were parts of the show that were scripted effects, so like video effects, where you want to have a certain filter overlaid on top of a certain person's video feed, which would require a pin to be triggered and then the video effect to come in. So that's where the media server's cue list came into effect, and that was the second ZoomOSC that was firing those cues. Then there was an improv section to the show where the director herself actually had ZoomOSC running with a nonlinear surface. We just remapped her keyboard buttons to send OSC commands through Isadora. And then she went through into the improv section of the show because she had the vision for what she wanted that to look like in that moment. And then there was a backup operator who had all of those control surfaces available in case anybody were to go down during the run of the show. So you can have multiple ZoomOSCs in the meeting, and it behaves the same way as if you had multiple co-hosts on the call. Did
everybody have total control, or could you isolate what one person could do versus the other?
Well, in terms of feature isolation, if you're not going to isolate the features in the control surface, typically what I do is if I have operators, I'll create my
so the control surface restricted what they would do.
Right, but you can also, if you wanted to do something like restrict multi-pinning, you can actually, as the host, designate who has multi-pinning and who doesn't have it. So, if you want to prevent somebody from being able to get in the way of multi-pinning,
like a co-host position.
Right. So you do it through the normal Zoom delegate. Can
you get all the way into the setup? Can you control volume at an individual remote computer?
So that's the really fun one. So if the talent is running ZoomOSC version 4 Pro, they'll be able to we'll be able to have a single audio control station with faders on your board or whatever you want to use that can actually talk to those far point ZoomOSCs and individually mix their mics. So you'll actually be able to use a soundboard to mix the sound in your Zoom call, which I'm just so excited about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Always great questions, John. Thank you. Let's see. We have a whole bunch. Do you mind taking a couple questions, Andy?
Not a problem at all. This is the funny thing about ZoomOSC is that a lot of people will make controllers that are supposed to work with anything, right? And that's your Scarhoys and things like that, your vMixes, all that kind of stuff. What we do is we make something that talks to everything. So I love the questions because it's there's so many different ways you can use it. You can use it as an educator, you can use it as a theater maker, you can use it as a broadcaster. So I love the questions, and I want to tailor this to what people are interested in. So yeah, bring them on.
Great. So Dean Robinson asks, he says, first, this is sweet. I have a question burning already. The pins are beautiful, but what happens if someone leaves and rejoins again? If they are pin 1, do they become pin 8, for example, when they rejoin?
So I might punt this to Richard because he really made some great contributions on our memory management side. But real quick, what I'll say is that we give you this control option basically to make a preset inside of ZoomOSC. So let's say you had a theater show with 12 people, 12 actors in it, and you know that they're always going to be named, Romeo, Juliet, whatever. And if Romeo leaves the call and joins back, your control binding is persistent because ZoomOSC remembers Romeo's username, figures out in the back end what their API ID and all of that stuff is. And that way, all you're concerned about is, whatever control number you gave to Romeo. Or if you are using usernames, well, then it's very easy. It's just so long as that person has that username, it'll apply the action to that person. Richard, do you want to talk about the different selection modes, groups accept, panelists accept, that kind of stuff?
Yes, I mean, a lot of that's moving into version 4, but in version 3, you have 3 ways of targeting a user. I think Andy mentioned earlier. You have by their what we call their participant ID, which is a number that will always represent that username. So if somebody's username is Bob, then they can always be using it. So Ed Wilcock at the moment is pin 0. If Ed left and came back, he would still be 0. There is a limitation to that in that because of how we talk to the Zoom SDK, and for privacy reasons, Zoom doesn't give us the ability to know if Ed leaves and comes back, whether he is the same Ed Wilcock. So there is a slight problem with that it could be a different person, but generally if you're doing a scripted show, that's not a problem. You just make sure everyone has usernames you know about in the past. We also have the ability to target people by username. So actually by saying pin and then sending an argument with their username. And then the third method is by the gallery index, which is actually you can say, I want to target the person at the gallery index, 0, i.e. the person at the top left. In version 4, we're adding a number of new options. We have the option to target by Zoom ID, which is an internal Zoom identifier for each user, which again doesn't stay the same as someone leaves the call and comes back, but is a more solid, more reliable way if you're doing some complex integration to target a user. We also have some really powerful integrations, such as you can target users, where you can send a list of users you want to target, or you can send a list of usernames, or you can say I want to target everyone, or you can say I want to target everyone except these usernames. So if you're doing something like this webinar and you had lots of panelists, you could say, right, everyone needs to shut up now. So you could just send one command that muted everyone apart from the host. So that's a lot of the work we've been doing with version 4 is finding we're quite eager to ensure that Zoomosc is very abstract. We don't want to force on the users a method of how they do their show. I'm very aware that the scripted stuff, a lot of the work that I did on Conversation is quite different to the work Andy originally did with Zoomosc, because we had the live audience in the Zoomosc call, and that was something that we had to work out how to actually make Zoomosc work rather than having just the performers that we knew about. So we had a load of users, we had no idea who they would be in the call. So we've tried to design the API for version 4 to actually really be agnostic in terms of how you use it, and to keep the actual Zoomosc app itself quite light on features, have the features that are really useful to be in the app, but also to assume that some of the logic will need to be done on the client side, because otherwise we're forcing the client to work in a certain way.
Right. So, and the other thing that's beautiful about that is that it multiplies every API feature by however many interface choices you have, right? So if you want to mute everybody, but you want to mute all panelists except, that's one command for us on the back end, but you can mix and match. So we're going from having, dozens of commands to having like thousands of commands available, just because of all the different ways you can mix and match them to create the specific action you want to do. So, yeah.
Great. Brian Henry asked us, how are you integrating this into vMix or OBS? So what are some of the workflows maybe you see?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I will typically do is I will run Zoomosc in multi-monitor mode. I'll pass both monitors with a NDI scan convert or a siphoner or something like that into my media server. I typically do a lot of theatrical work, so it'll go in there, and the production designer will have made, whatever effects they want to march through, and then I'll have that media server output an NDI source into vMix, and then vMix might have pre-show, show, post-show loaded up in there, and we'll play it out that way. In a broadcaster style workflow, you can do some cool things like when we give you OSC packets or things like that when the active speaker changes. So you could have, a titler that plays through and looks at who's talking and goes and grabs a lower third that's associated with that and tosses it up after a second, or something like that. You've actually already seen some OSC integrations on this show, some Zoom OSC with OBS, back when you had Rocco on to talk about the way that he uses OBS, and he used Zoom OSC with OBS to create automatic cropping for the different actors in the call for the show he was working on. And that allowed him to basically create ISO feeds that he could then mix however he wanted. We went and kind of took the same spirit of that idea and created GLSL shaders for that, which is basically a shader language agnostic way of mixing all of that together. And we make that available on our GitHub. So a lot of different use cases for sure. Richard, do you want to talk about a little bit of the conversation pipeline and how you set that up for the more interactive stuff?
Yeah, so a conversation was it was a theatrical piece that we'd originally had as a one-man show, a piece of theatre in a traditional theatre environment. And it's based on a book from the 1930s all about how you make polite conversation, which was very well-meaning, but is now rather racist and just not very politically correct anymore. We, in July, really wanted to create something that embraced the fact it was online rather than was embarrassed by that. There's a lot of theatre work which has been a bit like, oh, we have to do something, so we'll just do it online. And so we really looked at that. So we came up with a solution that allowed us to we wanted to keep we'd have the sort of feeling of communal watching. So we came up with a solution that allowed us to arrange the gallery view of the audience around the edge of the screen as a sort of picture frame. So you could have, in our instance, you could have up to about 24 people, I think, with 7 across the top, 7 across the bottom, and 5 down either side. That was done using a shader that I wrote along with Ash, who I think might be watching this at the moment. He's working on a companion plugin, which takes the Zoom gallery feed and some OSC from Zoomosc to tell it how many people there are in that gallery, and then basically moves the pixels around to move them into that this gallery view in real time around the edge of the screen. That was really powerful. That actually meant that you could have both you could have audiences watching the show without the audience watching overpowering the performer. I mean, that's a real problem. A lot of people either go, we'll do the whole show in the gallery view, but that's rubbish because the performer's this tiny box surrounded by other tiny boxes which are given the same level of importance, or they get rid of the gallery view completely and you may as well be watching a pre-recorded show because you can't see the audience at all. So that was one thing we did, and that was quite a task, but we got that working. The other thing we had was, because the show's about conversation, in the original theatre piece, Nigel, the actor in the piece, would talk to people in the audience and get information from them. So we wanted a way of doing that but over Zoom. So we had, on the stage, we had some physical TV monitors that would appear in shot, and the camera would pan and an audience member would find themselves on one of those screens, and Nigel would then have a conversation with his microphone, holding it in front of the audience's face, and they would then effectively talk into the microphone. And then we did some fun stuff, like we had the moon projected onto the back wall and then would bring one of the audience's face into the moon, so the audience became the man in the moon. And that, again, we could have done that using Zoom Rooms or using lots of instances of Zoom OSC, but we couldn't afford that number of computers. So instead we did that by taking the gallery view and using the shader cropping, calculating which bit of the gallery view the audience member was in and cropping them into it. And that was really successful. And it also taught myself a lot about, and I think it caused a lot of conversation with Andy and I about how Zoomosc should work, because I think it was quite a different usage of Zoomosc to some of the other stuff that had been done before. But it definitely, it was a really interesting project and something that we really were pleased with what we achieved with it in terms of what we were able to do. And it meant it felt like the audience were part of the show without feeling like you were just in a Zoom call, which was, I think, the big thing that we wanted to achieve.
I'll show real quick another use case in OBS from Felipe Nardi. So this is what he is doing. This is sort of a similar style to what Richard had done. So he's got a stream deck sitting there that allows him to jump between these different levels of importance between himself and the other people on the call. So, if he wants to be talking sort of with an even group or pull himself out, or he can grab somebody from the audience and bring him right next to him, like this guy in the ghost costume. Or he can, take the audience away if he wants to have just a 2-shot that's full screen. Or if he wants to roll back and bring everybody back, he can do that too. And this is all just him hitting buttons on a little remote in his hand that's talking to his Stream Deck app. So a lot of different shapes and sizes and flavors of kind of what you can do. And what we're trying to do is make the app as agnostic as possible so that a workflow like this is just as legitimate to the app as a theatrically cued workflow. So that's the kind of stuff that we're thinking about and doing. That's the power of those shaders and things like that.
Very cool. And thank you for showing us what Felipe was doing, because that was, talking about it is one thing. Being able to see what it actually looks like is very different. Lue Ibrahim asked, how many people can join, and can you switch speakers? I'm not really sure what they're asking here. So how many people can use Zoom? There's no limit to how many people can be using Zoom OSC in a meeting.
No, there's not a limit. There's, sometimes folks will need to be strategic about their logging levels and like how verbose their OSC output needs to be. If you have, hundreds and hundreds of people on a call, you can get kind of spammy with some of that. So you need to do a little bit of management just to help you scale. But I know that there's been a show that's been running with Zoom OSC since September, which usually sees 300 person audiences, and it's run 2 shows a day every day since September. So, they can be quite large.
But in terms of screens, like you could see 25 or 49 per screen, are there limits in terms of who you could pin on a screen or how you identify people from multiple screens?
Yeah, it follows. So the identification's unlimited, but the amount of people you can pin or the amount of people you can see in the gallery view follows Zoom's own laws. So I think it's 9 people you can pin maximum, and I think it's if you set it up to 49 people in a single view of the gallery view. So I think those would be the limits on for those features. Yeah.
Right. Rocco DeSanti, who we've been talking about a little bit. I just heard the word pro. Does that mean that with version 4, there will be a tier system?
That's right. So with version 4, we're going to be providing a massive update, as we've sort of alluded to at this point. We're going to be introducing a lot of different ways of indexing, as we discussed. We're having a whole new user interface. We're continuing to add new API commands and things that our folks have been asking for, and all of that will remain free. Everything that Zoom OSC is today is going to remain free and have more coming in the version 4 update. With the Pro version of Zoom OSC, which we're introducing as part of the 4.0 launch, you're going to have some new workflows that we're enabling. These are going to be things that, like that remote control that we talked about, being able to set somebody's far end camera device if they're both running a copy of Zoom OSC. Some of the multi-pinning and multi-spot, that's a workflow that pairs really nicely with broadcasting, and it's a new workflow for Zoom OSC that we're introducing on that Pro tier. But everything that Zoom OSC is today, it'll continue to be, and it will continue to be free under that mindset. But what we're excited to do is to offer this expanded level of capabilities, and that'll become part of the Pro tier. Ed, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. We have a lot of questions still, but I don't want to take up too much time because I want to make sure we get into some of the version 4 stuff. Frank Henney, though, did ask, and this is a question that got upvoted on Zoom, when is Zoom OSC v4 available?
So what we're going to do is, starting today, we're allowing you to sign up on our website for a notification about launch, and to get beta builds, we ask you to join our Power User Slack group. We've already started sharing a couple of beta builds with a select few, and we're going to continue to roll that out over the course of the week. So, if you want to get your hands on it as soon as possible, that Slack group is the best place to check it out. Our goal for the release of version 4 is, of course, dependent on the bugs that you guys find as you're beta testing. We don't want to release this before it's ready. We want to put stuff out there that's tested and true, and that you can feel comfortable integrating into your productions. So we want to make sure that it's had a fair amount of testing before it goes out there. But I think we're all on track to have it before the end of the month. So it's coming very, very soon.
I think that's even better news that everybody has been looking forward to hearing during this call so far. So with that, do you want to show us, maybe Richard can show us some of the stuff that's coming in V4?
Yeah, that would be great. Richard, I'll follow your lead. Let me know what you want me to show, if you want me to switch over to the Mac or whatever that is. Let's wow them.
Great. So as Andy says, we are trying to build it. Version 4 is very much building on what version 3 does. So there are a few, if anyone's used Zoomosc before, there's a few things that version 4 will break if you've got an existing patch. That we've tidied some language up to try and make a consistent language OSC syntax language API, and there's an awful lot of new features. I'm just going to switch to NDI so you can see my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. So just an example, this is now the new list of everything that you can do in version 4. The two big things that we've got are the feedback, meaning that in version 3, there was limited feedback over OSC from Zoom OSC back to your client. You could get a few nuggets of information, but actually building a sort of synced companion application was quite difficult. So we've worked to enhance that. The other big thing we've been working on is the remote control of participants, so that you can change various things about users over the internet, which we do. If any panelists have had some slightly odd chat messages from me, that's Zoomosc's chat control saying hello. So hopefully people can see this companion API here, which is as somebody said earlier, you don't need to buy a Stream Deck. You can use the companion software without a Stream Deck, and they do a very good emulator, which is what I'm running here. You can see here that these buttons, Ed, Richard, Zoomosc, Andy, Zoomosc V4, all line up nicely, hopefully, with this window here. Hopefully, if I resize this window here, you will see those buttons have automatically updated to where things are now. So Brent is bottom right, Brent is bottom right. If I make my window a bit deeper, you'll see we now get Iris, Ori, and Roscoe at the bottom. Now, the Stream Deck's not big enough to show everyone on the call, but obviously the bigger the Stream Deck, the more you can get. That's done looking at the companion app settings by using a special variable. If anyone knows companion, that we've got a variable which is Zoomosc gallery position 20 for this button here, which is row 0, 1, 2, column 0. You can then, all of the actions, so here I've got raise lower hand is set to a gallery, is set to the message is raise hand, and it's sending to the gallery position 20. So it's a really powerful syntax. And we have in companion, and this is still a work in progress, but we have grouped an awful lot of different actions. We can also do some really nice things. So if we look here, I can say, actually, my camera is, as you can see, is NDI, which is what I'm sharing my screen with. I can hit camera FaceTime in the on my Stream Deck, and hopefully, yep, that has switched my camera over to FaceTime. So you can do that with your camera, you can do that with your audio device, you can do that with your video device, you can do it with
the speaker, yeah.
Speakers. You can change your backgrounds with that. You will, subject to a bug I'm trying to get my head around, which I think may be a Zoom bug, we'll be able to add video filters with that. To show you another very powerful feature, I'm just going to share my screen now. So we have built into this new little window for Zoomosc, which is allows you to do some config. So I'm going to change my port, and hopefully now we have this app. This app, I have to say, is a bit of a test app for us. It's not really for public consumption. It's a bit like the companion app. It lets us do various things with it. One thing I can hopefully do, there may be some slight funniness with this, but if I can find myself in this, I should be able to say, scroll down, these are all the actions we have. Let me check this works while I'm screen sharing. If I say set camera device, has that taken it? And send selected. This brings up a window. This has pulled all the available camera devices from Zoomosc, populated a little selection box. If I select that and say save and then stop sharing, that has changed my camera device over to that. So that's a really powerful feature that lets you do that. The other really powerful feature, if I share my screen again, and you might want to pay attention, I don't know if you can see Andy's Zoomosc V4 screen. So if I select Zoomosc V4 via the chat, if you can see it, it's currently a blank screen.
So now it's my Stream Deck. So on my screen, it's showing up. The video feed of V4 on Mac is the top video in my list on my screen.
Yeah, so it's currently a little video of a Stream Deck. I should, if this works, be able to say this and say, you see, this is now populated Andy's cameras on my machine. So we're the other side of the world. I'm in London, he's in somewhere in America. And Andy, should I say NDI video? Is that the best one?
So NDI is what we're on now. Let's go FaceTime.
If I select FaceTime and click save, hopefully, plink, and there we go. And so what actually happened there is Zoomosc, and actually what I'll show you, is there a way for me to see the chat, I wonder, while we're in this?
I can show you my chats that came through from you.
Yeah, so if I stop sharing, if Andy shows you his chats, you'll see that what's happened is that Zoomosc has, via the Zoom chat, been sending OSC messages backwards and forwards between my device and between my machine and Andy's machine. That allows us also to do things like override the prompt to turn on your camera. So Zoomosc is quite clever that it will know that if it can talk to a user by chat, there are certain messages such as video on or unmuting that it will prioritize over the chat, because it knows that there's no chance of there being any prompt. There's certain messages which we know are best done by the API, in which case they'll be done locally. So muting and turning your video off will be done over the API. And there's certain messages that have to be done over the chat, so they'll be done over the chat.
Got a question real quick. So you're saying that when you're manipulating it, it's showing up in his chat feed, what you're manipulating?
No, the actual communication is happening by the chat. So what's happening is I'm saying Zoomosc is converting my request of what I want Andy to do to a chat message on my end, and Andy's instance of Zoomosc is taking that chat message and saying, oh, this is an OSC message, and converting it back into OSC his end, and then acting on it.
So it's basically, we're using chat as a back channel with macros that you can do to specify.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So a basic user type things, if you ever watch like a Twitch feed or anything like that, and the user has commands in their channel that bring stuff up on their screen, it's basically, in short theory, is similar to that. It's just you're allowing Zoom to use a controlled command that you're queuing to queue something on somebody else's computer.
Right. Yeah. And Chris, you make a great point too, that somebody who's not using Zoomosc, pending, how exactly we build this out, will be able to physically type out some macros too. And we could give delegates, a certain ability to do something via actual text entry if they're not running Zoomosc on their end.
So basically, you can create a whole chat GUI that somebody doesn't even have to have a Stream Deck, where they can just type commands in chat and automatically change functions in Zoom.
And it doesn't.
That's freaking insane.
It doesn't even have to be macros, right? So we've had on Office Hours the other day, we had somebody on who's showing a video game that they made in Zoomosc and Isadora, where it was pilot by committee asteroids. So everybody in the chat had to say up, down, left, right for the ship to dodge the asteroids, and it took the average of all of their piloting commands and moved the ship to get it around the asteroids. So you can do it with any chat message. You can get the contents of it if you want to do it. Yeah,
we've effectively got three different things you can do with chat. You can via OSC, you can send a chat message. So you can say /Zoom/chat hello world, and it will send the hello world chat to the user you specify. Zoom will emit the chat messages it receives over OSC. So you could take the chat messages that Zoom OSC receives, send them into Isadora. Isadora can process them and do some math. You could have a poll, or you could change the lights. People could just send the message light on it. But this bit of the chat, actually, you send the OSC to Isadora as if you don't. The whole idea of this is actually as an OS from the OSC side, you as a user don't need to care whether the user is local or remote. So the command for me to change my camera is /Zoom/me/set camera NDI, to simplify it effectively. To change the camera for a remote user is /Zoom/user Bob set camera device. It's the same syntax. You don't have to sit there and go, they're remote, so I have to think of one thing. I'm local, so I use another. Zoomosc does the work to work out whether or not it should send that message over the chat, or whether it should send it via the SDK or whatever.
That's amazing.
And there's a fifth thing you can do with the chat, which is actually emit an OSC message of your own definition on the far end. So if you guys are familiar with our Streamweaver product line, this is sort of like Streamweaver for Zoomosc, where you can say, I want to send. I have a confetti cannon that's sitting, next to my participant, and I have an OSC message on an Arduino that's going to fire this confetti cannon, and I want to actually be the one to trigger that. You can send an OSC message through the chat. Zoom OSC will turn it into actual OSC from the chat, emit it on the network to the adapter, IP address, and port that you specify in that macro, and shoot it out as an actual OSC packet to hit that confetti cannon. So, yeah.
Quick question. When it's sending these chat messages, are they point-to-point chats or are they going out to everyone?
They're point to point. We do give the option for you to broadcast messages. So a lot of the hellos and the pairings will be public because it's how the Zoom OSCs learn who each other are in the group. So some of that is done in a public way. Likewise, with you can still chat to everybody if you want to send like pre-show instructions on a certain timer. You could have QLab emit chat messages on a clock based on your pre-show time and set it to chat all, and it will put that in the everybody chat. So you get both options. The macros are usually done from point to point messaging.
So Andy, how does that work with breakout rooms? Can you be streaming different chats to different breakout rooms?
I'm not actually sure. Zoom's breakout rooms are something that we need to learn a little bit more about on our end, just exactly how all that's handled. I know that like hosts can broadcast to all breakout rooms and that the API does allow for that sort of thing.
The broadcast would be great if you could do something to individual room. Right now you get a 60-second warning. It'd be nice if you could paste questions in a breakout room and things like that.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see what Zoom actually allows beyond just what their interface skins, because that's always the big question is, we have a Zoom interface, we use it, we know what it does. The question is what's actually running behind it and how many options are Zoom not giving you through their interface that we can give you through Zoom OSC, or reverse. Are there things that the vanilla client can do that the SDK can't do? So that's something we needed to learn a little more about before we know if we can break open that further.
Andy, one concern that came to mind as Bodhi asked his question actually was whether or not the far side the client side can see the context that's coming through the OSC commands. My worry is if you're in a big event and the chat's being used by everyone for verbose conversation, then all this chatter comes in that's all OSC command text. That's going to really freak a lot of people out if it's not in verbose, if it's not something that they can understand. And are they going to be able to find their own messages that they're typing in that event to each other, or to the group, I should say, because obviously this is kind of point to point. You're saying these are private messages to each end that's receiving them, or they could be global. So how do we filter that stuff or make it safe for the people who are attending, that they don't get really confused at all this context being thrown at them in the chat?
Absolutely. So the two things I would say is first, for this to work, you have to have Zoom OSC on both ends. So in theory, there's already been a little bit of participant prep to get them configured with that, just as a prerequisite to using this tool. The other thing I would say is that if the chat isn't an acceptable option for the type of event that you're running, we do have Streamweaver for that. So you could deploy Streamweaver and then actually send OSC messages to their end and not use the chat system as the back channel for that negotiation of comms if you needed to keep the chat clear. So that would be the two ways.
Now I get it. And that was something that we shut it off on one event that we did, but I could see it being used in other types of situations because the attendees want to be able to converse about what they're seeing on the broadcast during that webinar or whatever it is that they're working with. So I just want to make sure people aren't going to get like mind boggled by all this stuff flying in the text chat and not knowing what to do with it.
So I'm going to interrupt real quick. So Andy, one of the things that demo was great on the Facebook side, just because of the nature of screen sharing, the way Richard was showing that, we weren't always able to see the like when your Stream Deck camera switched to your camera on the webinar side per se. So that's just because we're trying to demo this while we're also in a Zoom webinar. So I think at some point, would it be possible to schedule a time that our audience that's watching, who maybe didn't get to see that, maybe through our Discord, AV Tech Talks has their own Discord server now. We can, schedule a time to get you to come back and maybe show that in a meeting so people can see that happening in a more, efficient way for our webinar audience. Is that something we can work out?
More than happy to work that out with you. Yeah,
great.
Absolutely.
And then because you mentioned it, and it sounds kind of interesting, can you just give us a little bit? I know this isn't the first software you guys have developed. Streamweaver is something else that you guys have developed. Can you just tell us a little bit, real quick, what that is?
Absolutely. So Streamweaver is our other product line from sort of our Zoom family, and Streamweaver is a couple of things, but it's a point-to-point video, audio, and protocol transport system. So what we've done is we've taken the SRT protocol and we allow you to send audio and video, which is a very standard thing for SRT to do. But we also allow you to send control protocols like ArtNet, SACN, OSC, Visca, all of those different things that you would use to control farpoint devices that you love using on your LAN but want to use over WAN. If you have a Streamweaver endpoint on both ends, you're actually able to take an OSC packet from my network and send it to another network that's running Streamweaver. A really common use for this is in lighting design in the theater. So if I have a light board and I have light fixtures that I've sent to all of my talent, I can use my light board here and control light fixtures all over the world. If they're all running Streamweaver, they'll take my ArtNet packets that my board is generating, convert them into SRT, download them and rebroadcast them as ArtNet on the talent end, and you'll be able to have remote control of their lighting instruments on the far side. So this is sort of the Zoomosc in a sense is a gateway drug into this sort of level of automation where you can have control of anything anywhere. And then of course do the audio visual transport. This is something like if you have on the AV side, if you have NDI on your local network and you want to get that NDI transported to somebody else somewhere, we can pack that into SRT, send it over there, turn it back into NDI, give it back to you. If you have an AV device on your end, you want to receive all of your talent and ingest them and then post them as individual NDI sources for your broadcaster, you have them all run Streamweaver, detect their AV devices, send the SRT to you, turns it into NDI, throw it into vMix. So protocol, audio, and video transport is what we do. And it's point-to-point connections, but you can make as many of them as you want. And if you compare it, add the cloud to that, if you add like an SRT gateway or any of the SRT infrastructure that's out there for the protocols, you can bifurcate it in the cloud. You can send it to a bunch of different destinations. You can do these really, really powerful combinations because SRT is a widely adopted standard. So anything that can work with it can work with these theatrical or these control protocols through cloud workflows. So
and basically the same bandwidth of any standard.
So one of the things we love about SRT is that it works really well in adverse network conditions because it has in protocol packet reconstruction. So for example, DMX is an always on protocol. We were just talking about the other day on office hours, right? So if you drop a frame of DMX, your light flickers. That's not acceptable for our transmission over the internet where you're dropping packets all the time. The reason we like SRT is if we drop a packet, we can reconstruct what that packet was through SRT and we'll never drop a frame. Now, if you're losing more packets than you're receiving, obviously things will start to fall apart. But for those momentary sort of glitches, SRT can perfectly reconstruct that. And that's sort of the secret sauce for how it is able to maintain its integrity.
So on the face, Andy, that looks a little like Sienna. Is that kind of the system build that you're going for there, where everything's compartmentalized component built so that you just connect the dots and build a system?
Yeah, so we talked with, we looked at Sienna back in the day, we spoke with them, and their workflow is, deploy $250,000 hardware on every endpoint and and run this big cloud infrastructure, and it's good stuff, and it's what the Parliament uses and all of that. So there's some real powerful use cases if you have if you have tons of cash to be able to throw at it. What we do is we offer a software endpoint that can do all of that protocol transport and negotiation for $89. So it's just a completely different deployment.
You just sold me. You'll see my PayPal come in sometime.
I just find it interesting that when you do a production, like we had a production going where we had two of our actors who had to be in another room on a monitor being watched by the first room. And this would have been really great for timing and just communicating back and forth to say, hey, okay, we're coming to you, we're going to here and all that. And just making theater move more smoothly in a multiple location shoot.
Absolutely.
With half live and half not.
Right.
Andy, if I go back to Zoomosc 4, when those commands are being sent back and forth, are they being logged somewhere? If I'm trying to debug a program and maybe I'm sourcing it off QLab, are all those commands going to be logged somewhere so I can look back through and see what happened or what took place?
So we do give you a console. That console is sorted by verbosity. So if you just want to see errors and warnings, you can filter for that. If you want to see everything, all of the things that we were thinking, and all the things that the SDK was telling us, we can pump all that into the screen and you can take a look at it there. That's how we build it. That's how we debug. Right. Hey, did that work? Did that not work? So we give you all of the same stuff we give ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
I heard your... Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
So, Andy, this might be version 4, but you were talking about being able to control some of the Zoom features like backgrounds or, the whatever they call it when you do the funny hats. So in I should know, right? In 4, with virtual backgrounds, could I actually control the set of all my actors?
Yes. So you can have all of your actors, you email them what the set designer's backgrounds are, have them load up those virtual backgrounds, and then build queues on your end that tells them what virtual background to be in. Talent never touches Zoom again.
So they have to load them in a particular order, or will it know what the background is?
Zoom
Because it's staying on your machine.
So the backgrounds, so you'd have to send the backgrounds out to the far end, and then we can do a couple of things. We can we can set the background by its name, its file name. So you can request the FarPoints files, and then in QLab say like, all right, I want the sky background. So /Zoom/username/ set virtual background Bob Sky, and then fire that, and that will go find whatever number it is. It will go set that sky background for Bob, and then have that be, instead of making it Bob, make it all or all except host or whatever, and then you can change everybody's virtual backgrounds together. So
could you make a zip file, send it to them, and actually load them for them?
Yeah, or you can use any of Zoom's available background packs, right? So you can do that right in app. You can go pull up.
Right, but I want my custom background pack, and I just want to be able to send it to them.
If you haven't posted it to Zoom's, then just email them a zip and have them go load them in.
So conceivably, you could slice a background into all its quadrants of a single image, send everyone their individual images, and then at once turn a master background and gallery view into one giant image. Yep. Because you've told Zoomosc to rearrange everyone.
So yeah, that's what we did for the first Zoomosc show, which was Mad Forest. We had a couple of scenes where they were supposed to be lying in the grass together, and we had like the picnic blanket kind of crisscross through all of the Zoom squares and the grass behind them in the mountains on atop the top row. And we made these spanning backgrounds. Now, a shortcut to that, if you have access to a media server, is to put everybody in front of green, right? And then key out the gallery view and slide your image behind the whole thing. But for situations where that doesn't work, of which there are many, because sometimes the moment you go through a production pipeline, you're adding latency. And if you're trying to do everything right within Zoom, that's a great solution. Yeah.
Sure. One quick question too about the verbosity. You had mentioned, or maybe I misheard you, that there could be a way you could write commands verbose that would then translate OSC and then retranslate on the other end. Was that my right perception? Or let me ask you in a different way. You're now interfacing to all these other companions, Stream Deck, you name it. Have you considered your own GUI for this application to make it all inclusive?
Yeah, so not only have we considered it, Richard built one, and that was what he was showing you earlier. So right now, our sort of philosophy for the program is, let anything control Zoom. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where like, well, we did that. Now let's see what we can do. And whether it's a hardware or a software controller for Zoom, I think we're definitely interested in that. Richard has done some really great contributions on sort of our own diagnostic and testing framework. But you saw his app was basically like, hey, you open a drop-down menu next to this person's name, it sends a chat, populates all the devices right there. You select it, save it, set it, go. So I think that that's definitely something that's in the cards. It's not a thing that's going to come out with version 4, where we're going to need some more time to polish and get everything perfected. But I could see that being in the cards. Yeah.
So version 4 is going to be real powerful. Could we white box something which would be the teacher desktop or the park ranger desktop with only the features that we want?
I have no opposition to customizing. So if there's something that you have in mind, and at the same time too, you can white box Zoomosc, or you can just set your controller to only have the functions that you need them to have. So for example, make a Stream Deck preset that only builds out the functions that teacher needs. And then the fact that it can do all this other stuff doesn't matter because there was no interface to it. So it's not going to confuse them or get in their way. So just make a good Stream Deck profile, ship them a Stream Deck or send them the companion and then work from there.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking of a school district that has embraced Zoom. Teachers have iPads and we essentially create their control station for their classes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Touch OSC plus Zoomosc on the Mac or whatever. That's a great combo right there for classroom control.
So Andy, I just want to check in and see, are there any other features that we should get through tonight? Because we are about 20 past the hour, and we got about 40 minutes left. So I want to make sure if there's anything else that you and Richard want to show us that we get to it. There are a ton of questions. We are at no loss for questions. There, I can tell you right now, there's more questions than we have time for. So what we'll do is we posted a link to the Discord, the AV Tech Talks Discord in the Facebook chat. I'm about to put it into the Zoom webinar chat, and we will consolidate some of those questions, and we'll figure out how to follow up with Andy and Richard to get those things answered if we don't get to them tonight, because there's just so many great questions here that I don't want to lose them, but we do want to make sure that we respect the time for the show. So, Andy, is there anything else you can show us?
Let me show you.
V4?
I'll show you something that is for those of us who are interested in ISO feeds. So, just to recap what an ISO feed is, it's individual isolated video contribution or audio contribution. And the reason that's powerful for broadcast workflows is it allows you to fade from input A to B. It allows you to, construct a multi-view. If everybody's in front of a green screen, it allows you to multi-composite them into different spaces. So having isolated output from Zoom is a really powerful thing. Now, I'll show you there's two ways that Liminal addresses this. The first way is with our shader, which is kind of broken into two pieces. This is the Isadora program from Trickotronic, and this is our on our GitHub. You can download these to what are called user actors. On the left here, we have the auto cropper. The auto cropper is constructed of the shader, which is also open source and available for download. So what the cropper does is you tell it. Well, actually, I'll say what I really like about these user actors is that you don't have to have Zoomosc to use them. You can manually type in all the numbers on the left-hand side and get the output that you're expecting and sit there and just punch numbers into it. What Zoomosc does is if you have OSC feed these values on the left-hand side of each of these things, it'll automate all of what I'm about to show you. But the way that it works is if you tell it the number of people in the gallery, rows and columns, do some calibration, what it will do is it'll say, all right, we got a gallery view with 12 people in it. Well, here's the video at each position of the gallery view cropped for you and provided out. And then what the decider does is basically a router. You tell it which actor ID is in which position, or Zoomosc automatically populates that with the gallery tracking information. And what that means is on the output side here, no matter where actor 1 is in the gallery view, you can reliably drag off of this and have their video feed. Pump that out to NDI, Spout, Siphon, whatever you want. And that's always going to be that person. That's super powerful when you start to do compositing or theatrical workflows. And that's what we currently have available. One of our power users, Bernie Bernstein, has made a JavaScript version of this that has even more combinations and options than we have in the shader. So that's definitely something worth checking out, just to give you a taste of what the power of gallery tracking is. It's one of the most sort of loved sides of Zoomosc is the tracking information that it gives you about that view, especially because we had that before it was possible to arrange the gallery view. And at that point, that was absolutely mission critical for anything like that. Now, the other thing that I'll tease you with now, and I can see a grin starting to grow on Richard for this one, is we have a product that will actually provide you ISO output from Zoom. So what do I mean by that? Well, we'll have an app that can join a Zoom call just like Zoomosc, but it will pump out NDI feeds of everybody in the call individually, and it will contain the OSC core in it, so you can specify all the things that we just showed you, but also be able to subscribe to NDI feeds. If I want to click, Ed and Roscoe and myself and pump them out as NDI feeds into vMix. Well, we showed that in Zoom Test Kitchen the other day, exactly how that would work. And so that'll be coming soon. We're exploring things like having the ability to do siphon output or individual recording or audio embedded in those feeds. So those are things that we're actively researching and investigating. But you'll hear more about that from us soon. And that's something that once we have that, at that point, you could do things like have like a deck link in a computer running this and have SDI outputs of everybody in a Zoom call and do some crazy stuff like that. So once you have that, you have basically everything you could ever want from Zoom. So
now when you say soon, do you mean soon maybe next few weeks to a month, or do you mean soon within a year?
I mean the next few months. I think it's something where, as you saw, we had a working beta of it that we showed in Test Kitchen the other day. Really, everything we're doing here is seeing, can we get that siphon audio, and can we get, some other specific things in there to clean up the workflow a little bit. But it's come quite far. There's a lot of work that's already gone into it. And it's now a question of where do we cut off the features on the first release and how do we package that up, and and then doing qualitative testing on our end. Go get a deck link, throw it in and see, hey, what does that SDI actually look like? Is that the full quality? Are we, how is that scaling? What kind of processor load can we expect? When we have tons of people in a Zoom call, there's going to be a limit. We're not going to, necessarily impose one, but you're going to have a hardware limit to how many NDI feeds or SDI feeds you're going to be able to encode from a call. So we need to learn that and do the R&D on our end before we can release it, I think. But we had a working demo I showed you guys on Friday, so we're super excited about that.
Yeah, I think 1F Jeff's got a pretty good handle on the bandwidth requirements for those NDI feeds. So I would talk to him. I know once you get up over 8, 10, 12 NDI feeds on a single gigabit network, you're going to run into snags. So if you're going to go up to 2.5 or 10 gig service, then you've got a lot of leeway. But I think we're going to have to really dig into that, like you said.
And that's why we're excited about Siphon, right? Because what we'll do with Siphon is we'll toss it into Black Siphon, which is the bridge between Blackmagic and the Siphon interface. So we'll throw all that stuff into memory, just put a ton of RAM in your system, right? Post 64 Siphon feeds up in there, whatever it is. I see Richard crying because of the processing overhead on converting that. But assuming you have that end of it figured out, then we give you the SDI cable, and at that point, the network is what the network is, and you just throw a bunch of deck links in there and you're off to the races.
Sorry, I was letting my
Andy.
saying goodnight to my little guy.
I'm gonna bail, Ed. I got some other appointments I got to make tonight. But thanks, Andy, for all your intel here today, and Richard as well for all of your input. So we'll be sure to be in touch. I'll be looking up some of your products tonight.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Thanks, Leland. So that leads to a great question that Jason Gilly had asked earlier. He says, my question isn't technical, really. Wondering, given how fast Zoom is advancing, making changes, do you perceive risk going deep on OSC? How will you stay synced to Zoom given the pace of their changes?
Sure thing. So there's two types of changes that Zoom makes: security changes and feature changes. When there's a security change to Zoom, developers are given at least a 30 days heads up to be able to update their integrations, and they give us the roadmap for exactly what we need to do to be able to be compliant with whatever encryption protocol, security change, whatever it is they're doing. So we get that stuff early, and we've had this happen before. What we do is we just make an update to Zoom OSC, and then you're going to be totally compliant with the new meetings. So that all comes to us in advance, so there's zero downtime for security features. When it comes to UI features, multi-pinning, multi-spotlighting, that's something where it's sort of at Zoom's discretion when those features are released. Some of them take a while, some of them come quite quickly. The best thing I can ask for, if you have the specific feature that you want to see in Zoom OSC that we respond with, hey, it's not in the SDK yet, is to go as a group, communicate to Zoom that we want that feature made available to developers. That's what we did with multi-pinning and multi-spotlighting, and that's how we got it. We asked quite often, and we were able to get that feature. So Zoom OSC is just as much a community project as it is, a product. And when we work together to ask Zoom for features, we can generally make them happen. So that is sort of a two-tiered response. Things that would absolutely break Zoom OSC, we get plenty of heads up to be able to make our adjustments that we would need. If it's a specific feature you want in the SDK that we don't have, then we have to sort of petition for it if it's not on the roadmap. But if we work together, we can generally get whatever we need.
So with that said, if you join our Discord and there's things that you want to see Zoom OSC be able to do, and we're running into those issues, between Andy, if you find things, let us know and we'll blast it out to the Discord and then get everyone to put in a support ticket at the same time so that we have that strength in numbers kind of thing. Squeaky wheel, right? So Sean Newman had a handful of questions I see. Do you have to import the preset again after signing into the meeting with updated names and sequence of gallery for that call?
So no, you don't have to. If you want to make a preset, what we do is we give you a text file. You write the text file once, save it, and then call the /zoom/load command when you hop into the call, and it will load up your preset back again. So there's really just one command, and you set your patch file up and say, hey, I want to use that patch in this call. Then you're good to go. When it comes to other customizations, again, Zoom OSC had the theatrical workflow first, and that's sort of like the participants list, IDs thing that's in there. Now, as we say with version 4, you can hop into a call and immediately, without doing any memory management whatsoever, start pinning and spotlighting and dealing with people that way. So it just depends on how you want to use it.
Great. Sean Newman also asked, I would love to see how you do that with lower thirds. I'm not sure what that was, but I mean, I'm sure everyone wants to know how you can do some lower thirds in Zoom.
Yeah, so I like to use the media server before I throw it into vMix, just because that's what I'm familiar with and it's my background. So what I can do is I can have there's an OSC message that we send that's active speaker, and when we send the active speaker message, we tell you who it is. I keep a table in the media server of what lower third graphic goes with each of those speakers, and then I put a little delay on it. So if we're on a certain speaker now, and I flip I have a master control that's like, I want lower thirds now, or I don't. I flip that, and then they start talking. Lower third fades up, and then it has an auto timer to fade itself back out. I do all that in the media server first, and then I can do just graphics and send that as an alpha channel input into vMix, and then just let that layer be on and have a different titler to control everything. But you could also go deep with vMix and OSC and automations and scripts and stuff like that, and go really deep and do it in vMix titler and have a good time. So yeah.
Thanks. That's it can get pretty hectic, but it's not something that's integrated into the Zoom. You're still gonna have to use something third party to accomplish
you use a third party titler. That being said, video filters are a fun way around this. I've seen some people experiment with using video filters as lower thirds, and with Zoom OSC's ability to trigger filters, assuming we work it out, because there's some bugs on their end, but assuming we work that out, you'll be able to use a chat message to trigger their lower third to come on, and a chat message to take it off, because it's a video filter, and that would get around titling through a broadcaster.
Are we able to upload our own filters these days?
I think there's a way to do it. I've seen somebody do a lower third with a filter. I don't know if they registered it through Zoom and then just had like an organization distribute it, or what exactly they did, but there was something that was done.
I usually turn those off in my meetings because everyone ends up putting on funny hats all the time instead of listening. So Andrew Yarvo has asked, regarding the pin 0, how would you be able to consistently ensure that user 0 would be the same every night in every Zoom call?
Right. So if you are building an integration for which you want to use these macro definitions, these target IDs is what we call them, participant IDs. What you do is the usernames are the key. The usernames are the thing that's consistent between instances and rehearsals and all of that stuff. If you know that your actor is always going to be named Romeo in the call, and Romeo is person 0 in the performance config file, that allows you to use that numeric argument to specify them. Now, you might say, well, just use a username in that case, but there are some situations where you want to exploit the sort of ambiguity that Sean is mentioning here, like an improv troupe. We have people who do like that sort of like jumping into the scene improv thing, where they'll change their usernames to be the character, to designate that they are part of the scene at that time, and then Zoom OSC will start talking to them and start pinning them or doing things with their video feed, and then when they're out of the scene, they change their username and they're out. Zoom OSC won't talk to them anymore. So you can this idea of like there can sometimes in theatrical context be a dissociation between actor and character, and this allows you to use the username to play with that.
Right. And I guess would it be a problem if two people were in a meeting with the same username?
Right. So we don't allow. That's why we have the Zoom ID, and that's why we have the gallery index and other methods. If you have two people with the same username, it'll grab the first one of them. So in that case, identify them. If you can't change the username, identify them by their Zoom ID. That's why we're introducing that in V4.
Cool. Awesome. J. Thor Goglin has asked a while back, if you have a meeting with 150 people, but only 20 are presenting, can I arrange them across a single page regardless of where they are in the gallery? Can I then jump across the options of video on off, audio on off, and spotlight with only those 20 people?
So Richard did this. Richard took two gallery views and composed them into a single view. And then yeah, you can use the group commands to specify, what subset you want to be working on. You can have Zoom OSC in both calls and specify ports for different, different commands or things like that. But on the visual side, you can have you can use Zoom OSC's gallery tracking information to compose unique gallery views. I think, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you did is you had sort of a traditional grid core and then a periphery. So you had your talent as a gallery view on a separate call piped into a webinar or another meeting that you brought all of their videos in, and you filled the hole with the talent. So yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Ben Dave asks, is there any chance that Zoom's API will allow you to change the background color of Zoom from black so we can key the background out of a gallery view?
So on Zoom OSC 3.2.1, the background is black. So that was just a gift in the SDK. So you can do that with 3.2.1. That changes in 4. No, we can't explicitly set that color, but it happens to be black in the 3.2.1 version.
Got it. Well, I guess what they're asking is if you can change the background color so that like between the grids and around the grid.
Not through the SDK.
Right. Okay. I didn't think so. And I don't know if anybody noticed, a few versions back, it on PC, it went to not as black. It's more gray than it is black these days. On Mac, it's still more of a true black, but I've had to do some color sources in OBS when I'm masking things and had to capture that background color that is not actually true black anymore. They brought that in when they did multi-pinning, and I think it's an artifact thing, the way they layer it. Are the shows that Richard mentioned earlier still available to see online? That was asked by James Hutchinson. So the ones where he did the outline with the gallery.
They're not, but there is. I did write a blog post which details in quite a lot of detail what I did with that, which we could probably get to people somehow if we wanted to.
Okay, great. So look for that. We'll post the link in the Discord. There's an actual channel just specifically for this show, so we'll put it in there once we get that link for you guys. Lars Svensson asks, what's your relation with Zoom? Do they like what you're doing?
That's funny because we got an email from them today. But I spoke with Zoom shortly after creating Zoom OSC just to make sure that we were in their good graces and that they weren't going to come out of somewhere and be upset with us. And they were actually really happy. They told us that the SDK is a core part of their business model, and that the way that we're using the SDK is exactly the way they want us to be using it. So they were quite happy with Zoom OSC, and they've we've started to develop relationships with the community managers, the other people who are building the SDK for their own apps. So we've sort of formed that developer community, and I think that's been especially lately, has been a very positive environment. And just recently, today we heard from Zoom again that they're interested in talking some more about some of the new features that we have and how they might be able to integrate some of that. So we'll be talking more, but we're in their good graces. We're very happy with each other. Of course, we in jest we complain about the SDK every now and then, and we certainly have our moments of frustration with how things are done. But it's the fact of the matter is Zoom has given us a platform unlike any other, and we're grateful for that.
Great. Sean Newman back here on the Zoom side asked these two questions. It would be cool to have a directions list to set Zoom OSC up, tutorials on this, and a link. Well, this is it right here. So we're giving you the live walkthrough on how to do this. But if someone wanted to see like some written directions, do you guys have that available?
So we have both written and video directions for Zoom OSC. So this is our YouTube channel, Liminal Entertainment Technologies. I have YouTube videos on setting up with Isadora, QLab, and the Stream Deck. So everything that we talked about today, detailed out in long form explanations with downloads and all of that stuff step by step. It's a great resource if you're more of a visual person. If you like text, head on over to the setup guide. The setup guide has everything from workflow overviews, case studies, quick start, memory management deep dives, the APIs, advanced workflows, downloads to shaders and integrations, everything you could want. And then if that's still not enough, join the Power Users Slack group, where you can ask other community members, myself, Richard, directly how to do certain things. And between all of those resources, we should be able to answer pretty much any question that you have. So,
Great. Sorry, I'm answering one of these by text. Okay, so Orion Slater had asked, does that mean someone in the audience could type commands into chat and Zoom OSC could act on them?
Only if you want them to. We allow you to specify what protections you want to put around it. So if you want to have everybody have access to it, only hosts and co-hosts, only a certain person, in the Zoom OSC UI, you can specify what level of protection you want to put. Because while it's cool for things like escape rooms and stuff like that, it's not so great if somebody's wise to Zoom OSC, jumps into a call, throws a /Zoom all video off, macro into the chat and bombs the OSC. So we do put a protection layer for that.
Right, because that would not be fun. I think there was a handful of questions I saw that come in about the security of the chat, and I think that was what Leland was kind of alluding to earlier when we were talking about it. James Hutchinson again from Facebook. Can you explain how to create a shader? Is it hard?
Richard, do you want to talk about that since you went through that experience?
It was a bit of a combined effort between Ash and I. I would say it's definitely not for the faint-hearted. You literally take a pixel and then have to calculate where that pixel should go based on a number of factors in a language that has virtually no debugging available. So you're working quite blind. The shader that we wrote is available on the Liminal GitHub. And that's the source code is there, so you can see that and play with it. But as with anything code related, whether it's easy or not is really dependent on who you are and what your definition of easy is. I think it definitely wasn't the easiest thing that I've ever done. And it definitely made my brain explode at certain points, I would say.
Got it. Thank you. And that you said it was available on GitHub?
Yes. So it's the ZoomOSC shader on Liminal's GitHub account. I'll put it on screen. But yeah, if you just go to github.com/liminalat, our public repos contain a couple of things, some on the Streamweaver side, and then this ZoomOSC shader. We also published something we make some internal tools that we made public to help developers who work in Avalonia or with FFmpeg or things like that. So some cool stuff you can find out there.
Great. And Andy, if you share that link with me, then I'll make sure I get it out to the audience.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Has there been any testing? This is from Simon Daniel Jerk. Has there been any testing with controlling a Zoom room via your Zoom OSC API?
So Zoom rooms are something I definitely need to learn more about in terms of how they interact with the SDK. So there's no SDK client for a Zoom room. So I can't recreate Zoom OSC as a Zoom room with that embedded, Zoom room device. But as you know, there's a bridge between Zoom meetings and Zoom rooms. So what I'm curious to see and need to test, and part of the reason I'm enjoying making these connections is that y'all have Zoom rooms and I have Zoom OSCs. And I have the API, so we can try to figure out what exactly we can and can't do. We need to learn more about it for sure. I'm curious what happens when you put that bridge in there between the meeting and the room. How much far point control can you get? I think there's a really, really powerful synergy using Zoom OSC and Zoom rooms together. So I'm curious to see exactly how far we can push it.
Great. James Hutchinson asked when you were talking earlier about the Pro version that's coming out, have you considered a nonprofit version of Pro? For pricing wise, I'm assuming is what he means.
So if you're like a registered nonprofit, and
right, yep.
Okay, well, we'll certainly apply the tax exemption, and Zoom OSC free is still there, and everything else I think we can try to handle on a case by case basis. We recognize the needs of the community that we're serving, especially in theater and things like that, and education. So we're happy to be human about that, I think we would probably be disposed to handle it on a case-by-case basis up front.
Great. Sean Newman asks, can you talk about Isadora? It's not really an OSC, and maybe we should table that because there are just so many other questions. So, Sean, join us on the Discord, and we will chat about that. Great. Andrew Yarvo, how are you feeding Zoom individual speakers spotlights into vMix or other Siphon or NDI feeds?
So the easy way is to scan, convert, and throw it into NDI and then into vMix. If you need really low latency, that's when you start to play with open frameworks, which is Spout and Siphon. So that's where you can start to explore some of that. There are programs that can make interfaces between NDI and Spout and Siphon. So it really just depends on what the video pipeline that I'm trying to build is. In this office, we have, an ingest station where we pull in all the talent as NDI. We have this station where I mix it all with pre-records or with graphics or whatever kind of mixing we're doing. And then a computer at the back of the room that does the RTMP. So NDI is a huge part of that workflow, but within each station, it's all open frameworks to try to minimize the latency and to keep the processor from making unnecessary NDI sources. So it just depends on how you want to mix and match it. But there's a lot of options. You're not for lack of having ways of pulling stuff into your broadcaster.
Great. Sorry. Can you speak more? Sorry, this is. I am the worst with names. I apologize to people. I am terrible with names. Talak Lopez Waterman asks, can you speak more about the bi-directional nature of Zoom OSC? And
yeah.
Based on the time, I'm guessing that's when you were kind of talking about some of the having it on both ends.
Well, I think it's also that you can send OSC packets to Zoom OSC and get it to do something, and Zoom OSC will send you an OSC packet to tell you about something. So you can have all the controls that we showed you, but you can also have things like get an OSC packet when somebody mutes their mic, and then on your end, if you want to have something that sends them a chat message that says, hey, turn that thing back on, don't touch that, or if you want to send them just a command to turn their mic back on, you can build that rule inside of whatever controller or media server or whatever it is you're building. And that's the power of that synergy, that you can automatically respond to things as they happen, like having the shader update, like having the these rules about chats or solving puzzles or all that kind of stuff.
Great. Ray Harris asks us, what do you log into with an SSO?
That's like when you do sign in with Gmail and stuff like that. So if you made your Zoom account and it's like you log in, but it takes you to a browser, and then you log in with Google, and then it pops you back into Zoom. That's single sign-on, and that's currently not something that the SDK has a great way of dealing with. But we're working on ways to add that, but not something certainly currently available.
Gotcha. Let's see. Lars Svensson asks, if raise hand in Zoom, is it possible to make background in the Stream Deck button red or green? So if somebody raises their hand, can it receive feedback on the Stream Deck?
You can certainly build that. We give you a packet when somebody raises their hand. And so you could just tell Companion, which is OSC aware, to have some function that, if I see this hand raised, highlight this thing. Richard, there's no red flag on that. That should be fine.
No, and we are planning to build some feedback actions in Companion, of which that would probably be one, so that you can perform on certain, whether a user is muted or whether a user has their hand raised. I think there's a few things like that we're looking to do.
Great. So yeah, we have still a lot of questions. I'm trying to get through them as best we can. I think some of these are going to spill into our Discord, and we'll follow up and get answers from Andy and Richard as best we can. Those links have been put in, but we'll drop them one more time if you want to join the AV Tech Talks Discord server. But before I put those back in, Chuck Wojak, if I'm not running Zoom OSC, but in a meeting that is, can I type a command and change something maliciously or benignly? So that was kind of what we were talking about earlier. There's ways to limit who can do those chat commands, correct?
That's right. Yep. So if you don't want somebody to be able to send it, you can block that from happening. If you want it, you can certainly allow it.
Marty Atlas, along the same kind of questioning, what kind of latencies are you seeing with the chat controls?
It's very fast, and it's actually at a very high sample rate too. So like if we're trying to set mic levels remotely through the chat overrides, like we can send, I was sending like 30 to 40 packets a second for that sample rate, which is pretty good. We could probably push it even further if I take off some of the limiters that we have. We have a nice way of handling in the API. If there's too many calls, we can queue them up and then dish them out as Zoom starts to allow them. But the latency is actually quite low. It was, I mean, in the demo, if you look back at Facebook, it was like as soon as Richard clicked that button, my view changed. So,
got it. This question, maybe you'll make more sense of it. Dean Robinson asks, could we get a little demo on how to pull 2 or 3 Zoom images only on the multi-screen out? So for a production, if I wanted to layer that onto a background for output, also this question ties in with the one above, can we change the awful dark gray background to a green screen for keying, which we kind of answered earlier.
Right. So that was the shader that I showed earlier, is basically how to take a subset of some view and part it out as pieces. Yep.
And then, I see these are some of the chat questions. Marty Atlas again. Are there any security concerns about chat controls?
Yep. And we've built in something to protect. So
perfect. James Hutchinson asks, can a combination of Zoom OSC and Zoom clients be mixed?
Yes. So for global actions, like for example, if you're jumping into a call and all you need is Spotlight, video on, off, and audio on, off, great. Run Zoom OSC headless and capture Zoom, because everything else is, everything's done at that point. So you can absolutely use them together, and we do that all the time. Yeah.
Great. And those can actually, I did it the other day where I was in a Zoom call and then I logged in with Zoom OSC and I was in 2 different calls at the same time on the same machine.
Yep. That's what we're doing right here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. Future is now, everyone. John Brewer asked, how well does Streamweaver work on a computer that's also running vMix? Does it require a dedicated computer?
No, Streamweaver's pretty, especially Streamweaver Lite, which is just the protocol stuff. That's pretty minimal. So we deploy them all in the same box usually.
Gotcha. Great. Dean Robinson asked, and this is more of a question for me, is there social media links for us to follow up with updates? So what I will do for you guys is I'll post all of the ways you can reach us to follow up after this chat. I'll put it in all of the relevant places.
While you're doing that, I think Roscoe had a question.
Oh yeah, I just wanted, has anyone done an award show yet? That's one of the most difficult things we tried to do with Zoom.
I know some awards have been presented at some things, but award shows, like we did a lot of Zoom OSC like graduations and things like that, which I don't really think they they don't face all of the same challenges as an award show, but there is some overlap.
Yeah, the winners didn't know that they'd won the awards, and all of a sudden they had to be pulled forward onto the home screen and then spotlighted, and that was, I can see how your product would do that amazingly well.
Yeah, so I remember distinctly that there was one event that we did where I remember that we needed this is before really Zoom OSC was mature enough to use in production, where we did a graduation and we had to like type in the name, find them, spotlight them, and then the next one that we did, I had it ready. And it was just a matter of like learning who was there and firing off, Stream Deck buttons. So it does help quite a bit with speed, when you need to do something quickly.
Thank you. Yeah, I see it coming.
Great. And thank you for that question there, Roscoe. That's awesome. And it gave me a minute to post those links in those chats. Let's see. Oh, Raymond Sweet had a handful of questions in a row here in the Zoom. I'm trying to bounce back and be fair and even. And we only have about 5 minutes left, so we're just going to get a couple questions in, and then we'll wrap it for follow-up. So Zoom OSC has to be a secondary attendee in the room calls, and if an attendee has Zoom OSC, they will also need a second login. Those
So
were questions, not statements. Sorry.
So ZoomOSC needs to be in the call in order to act on the call, and the talent can join exclusively with ZoomOSC. They don't need to. So there's not a need to join with both, unless you're like again under an SSO situation, or you need to start the thing with one account and transfer hosting, or you're trying to do some sort of clean capture with a V3 version. But no, you don't have to have talent joining twice.
Great. And he also asked, is the Stream Deck app different than ZoomOSC? The answer there is yes. And it, as of right now, it doesn't work on the Stream Deck app. Is that correct? There's no support for it on Stream Deck.
There's the capability of doing it. We haven't made a preset for the vanilla Stream Deck. Others have though. Reach out to like Felipe. Everything you saw with that demo was all vanilla Stream Deck.
Great. Wonderful. So I think, let me just quickly look and see if I can get to any last questions. There's so many in-depth ones. You know what? I'd really like to actually take a moment and pop over to our panel and get their take as we're getting close to the end of the hour. Brent.
I know they had mentioned pre-composing multi-pins and multi-spotlights. Is that a thing? Or can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So what I don't know is like whether or not you'd be able to do like a clean cut from a 3 to a 5, for example, or whether you'd see 3 dissolve, 5 come in. It just depends on how fast Zoom actually execute those commands. But on our end, we could certainly batch that stuff up. And if you build macros on your end that fire the OSC packets we need to compose those views, then yes. Just a question of whether or not you want to have something to cut to in between those recompose. Now we're talking about like a second of rebuilding, certainly not as long as it would take to do manually, but I just don't know visually what it looks like just yet.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
And that's something that's coming in V4, correct?
That's right.
Right, so
the Pro version will have multi-pin support.
Wonderful.
Does ZoomOSC unlock anything from like you're limited to certain things as host, certain things as co-host? Does it allow you to unlock any features as a co-host that normally a host only would have, or vice versa, or is it?
We don't offer controls that Zoom doesn't offer at the level that you're in. What we do is we just give you another way of interfacing with them. And then the things that we do some filtering. So like there's chat controls, you can say all co-hosts have access to this. And that's a filter that we've imposed. So in a sense, yes, in a sense, no. So things that are Zoom specific, it follows Zoom's rules. Things that are specific to us, we give you the granularity.
Great. Does anyone else have anything from the gallery? I mean, we just took in a ton of info and saw some really amazing features. So I would love to get anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak. I know, Ori, you are a big control guy. You like to use TouchOSC and certain things like that. What are your thoughts about what you've seen tonight?
I am kind of reeling thinking about the possibilities. It really is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and you're a big QLab user as well. You actually did our the AV Tech Talk on QLab. So how do you think you could see yourself using this in your workflow?
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I think you're probably hearing me echo a little bit.
Just a little bit, but that's all right.
Yeah. I am. I'm thinking. Yeah, I will probably incorporate QLab at least as a control space. Maybe build myself some Q carts in there to work with, in addition to using Companion.
Now, somebody did ask about QLab stacking. I saw that as a question. Now, what I would recommend is we did an episode of AV Tech Talks on QLab that Ori led. So instead of getting into that demo here, you can check that episode out, and I'll post a link to that in the chat so that you can find it pretty easily. But is there anything else last minute from our gallery that we'd like to ask Andy before we wrap up? Adam, looks like you have a question.
Going after the mute.
Yeah. I can unmute you. There you go. You're unmuted there, Adam.
Yeah, just wanted to ask, it might be a beginner question. Just wanted to know, like, can you put like pictures in on those, those buttons, like pictures behind it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can set that up. Yep. Companion lets you put anything you want behind a key. So
It'll be easier to just like navigate, like if like someone's like, they say my name, like Adam, and a photo of me, and just quickly go from there.
somebody actually was talking about building something with Isadora that would save frames from the call to a place that Companion could pull from and populate faces on the keys. I don't know that we're going to have time to build that ourselves, but I know that it's something people are thinking about. So check power users for that.
John has a question.
Not really just a question. One's just a thank you to Andy and Ed and the whole AV group for getting us together. In these times when things look rough, this is the closest I've been to anticipating Christmas gifts to coming out of Zoomosc 4.0.
That's funny, John. That's great.
Just call us Santa Claus. Yeah, that's great.
Can I just ask Andy, Richard, what motivates you guys? I mean, what can we do to just keep encouraging you or support you or just make it happen?
Should we send chocolate? What's the deal here?
Caffeine.
Richard, do you want to start with that? I'll have a sappy one in a minute if I think about it.
And I think feedback is what I really like to see. I think getting people using it, and I really like getting bugs and feature requests and stuff that show you that, I mean, the stuff that I do, I really enjoy seeing it being used. And so if people are using it and feeding back what they're doing with it and the problems they've got and what they'd like to see it being done with it, then that's what I really enjoy.
I love seeing case studies as well, like, successful use cases. Like for me, I get, sometimes I'll even see ones that can get me quite emotional. Like the other day, somebody messaged me and said, "Hey, I use Zoomosc to sign ASL into a call for my family," and I was like, that really kind of took me back, because I'm the entertainment industry. I think it's vital and important, and that's kind of where my head was. But to see it used, and then the other day, Richard and I learned about somebody who's using it in the field of medicine, and for like telehealth and things like that, and that hits really deep. To see it, to feel like it's not just this sort of application used for broadcast entertainment. That's all. Those are all good things and important things. But when it's to have it have that level of an impact in people's like day-to-day lives, that hits really really close to home. So seeing those case studies and seeing what people are doing with it is helpful for us to build it, but it also like does hit back at a emotional level. So appreciate everybody.
Well, I think Andy, I can say from the highest levels, people are amazed at what your group is able to do. But even more amazing is the willingness to share, so those people who have special needs and special uses can use it. The thought of ever having a tool like this for classroom teachers wouldn't happen, but we'll be able to do it because of what you guys do. And people are amazed at what you guys can do.
We really appreciate that.
Bravo, and thank you for sharing that too.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who's been on this has been able to close their jaw from almost the first moment that you started talking, Andy. It's been just one amazing feature after another. We really appreciate you walking through how to set it up, and just going over all these new features. Super excited. And you said for the beta, they can find the sign up on the website, correct?
Right. So if you check out our webpage, we've added a sign up button that you can go and get notified about version 4 when that becomes available. We also give you a button to join the power users Slack, so you can get the beta builds if you want to get started on your integrations today. That's a great way to interface with us and get set up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I want to have everybody on the panel just give a quick thank you to to Richard and to Andy. Thank you guys very much. I love John's clap sign.
That's great.
No, that was amazing job. Thank you guys so much. We did go a little overtime today, but great questions. For anyone whose question we didn't get, we'll get it on the Discord. We posted those links. I posted other links to our other social media. Real quick, before I kind of tell you about what we got coming up, Chris, do you want to just give us a little talk? Especially, Andy, we were just talking about emotional things. Chris does some charity stuff. So if Chris, can you just give us a quick rundown of what you got going on?
Yeah, thank you as always for letting me broadcast this to everybody. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/ToxicBioWolf. I do have that link that I'm going to put into the channels here for you real quick. What I do is I stream for what's called Extra Life. What Extra Life does is it allows any donations you guys make to go to the local hospitals to pay off bills and things that the kids that are sick and need help, and parents that can't afford the payments and their medical treatments, their medicines, whatever it could possibly need to go to, it goes to that. The other thing I do is any personal donations to me made to my personal PayPal does not go to me. I don't take a cent of it. It goes all to buying Nintendo Switches for the kids, and I donate those to the local hospital as well for the kids that need help and just a little bit of love to let them know gaming can save the world, and that's where my motto comes from.
Great, thanks, Chris. I mean, what you're doing is awesome. We, very very selfless thing. It's great what you're doing. So with that, because we have gone over, Omar's. It seems that his phone had died.
Yeah, I think it died again.
He was on his phone on a job site, so he's not with us tonight. But I did just see him post a comment, so he's watching somewhere but couldn't get back in the Zoom call.
That was me because I'm on his account.
Oh, you're on his account.
Don't worry.
Gotcha.
Hi, guys.
Gotcha. But next week, tune into AV Tech Talks. If this was your first time watching, thank you for being here. We hope you guys come back. If you've registered for the webinar, you'll get an email next week reminding you. If you're watching on Facebook, we'll be in the same place, or you can join us on the webinar. The link's been posted in the chat. I'll make sure I post it again. For next week, we are looking at Pro Presenter. Chuck Wojak will be walking us through how he uses it, and I'm going to post a link to the event page for you guys so that everybody can find the information. But same bat time, same bat channel, we will be here. And
don't forget to sign up for the Discord.
Yep, join our Discord.
Also YouTube.
Yeah, we are going to start. We didn't do it this week, but we're soon in the future going to start simul streaming to Facebook and YouTube. We found out that a lot of people aren't on Facebook and they'd like to come see the show. So a lot of my LinkedIn connections are saying, "Hey, why don't you guys have a YouTube?" We do have a YouTube, and there's a lot of content on there from AV Educate. So go seek that out. Maybe Bodhi, if you can find that link and don't mind putting it in, that would be awesome. I also want to take just one moment to thank the DVE store for their continued support of AV Tech Talks. We get a little bit of a resolution bump thanks to their efforts, and Guy and his team, super knowledgeable. They can help you with any of your gear needs. If you need to buy something, check out their site. It's dvestore.com. They'll be able to set you straight. Cool. So with that, I think we're gonna cut off from Facebook. It's 10 past the hour, and we will definitely be looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Oop, let me put that in also. I don't want to forget our DVE store link in the chat. And great. So everybody, let's say goodnight to Facebook. When we set it up with Andy to get the rest of those questions answered, we'll have it posted in our Discord. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next time. Thanks.